She placed the small paper crane into his shirt pocket like she always did. "For protection," she whispered, her tiny fingers smoothing the fold. He smiled, not because he believed in magic, but because she did. And today, in a world of polished shoes and perfect suits, one quiet father was about to remind them all. Real strength doesn't make noise. The marble floors of the Violin Grand shimmered under the soft touch of early evening lights, each crystal chandelier scattering reflections like stars on water. Guests in tailored suits and designer gowns moved through the lobby with practiced grace, their polished laughter blending into the gentle hum of luxury. At the far corner, unnoticed by most, sat a man in worn jeans and a faded black jacket. His name was Daniel Ross, a quiet figure with tired eyes and strong, calloused hands. Beside him, on the velvet couch far too grand for their modest presence, sat his daughter, Ava, just 9 years old, with a pink backpack and a bundle of colored paper peeking out. She was folding cranes, her morning ritual. Every day, from whatever she could find, she'd carefully create one and tuck it into her father's pocket. She believed in them. "As long as your crane stays safe, you stay safe," she'd say, serious like he'd told her bedtime stories weren't real but still needed to end happily. Daniel always let her believe. Truth was, he liked the idea too. The world hadn't been kind, but Ava was the one thing that made it beautiful again. This wasn't where they belonged. Everyone around them made that clear. The glances, the half-whispered laughs. A father in work boots and a little girl folding paper didn't fit in a place that served coffee worth more than their weekly grocery bill. Daniel hadn't brought her here for attention. He was here to finalize an inspection contract, a building systems safety upgrade. One that might finally mean steady work, predictable pay, and school supplies that didn't need to be secondhand. A tall man in a black suit walked past and paused, scanning Daniel from head to toe, his badge read Director of Security. His smirk said more than his words. "Maintenance guys usually come in the service entrance," he said loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. A few chuckled into their drinks. Daniel looked up, eyes calm. "Not here to fix toilets," he said evenly. "Just waiting for the manager." Before we dive deeper into this unforgettable video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That way, you'll never miss any new coming videos like this. Now, let's get back to it. Ava looked up, sensing the change in mood. Her tiny fingers paused on the wing fold. "Daddy, are we not supposed to sit here?" she asked, her voice small against the echoing confidence of the room. "We're okay," Daniel said softly, placing his hand over hers. "Some people just talk loud when they feel small inside." She didn't quite understand, but she smiled anyway, trusting him completely, because she'd only ever known strength through silence. From across the room, invisible lines were being drawn. People watched them like an off-script show. What they didn't know, what one guard was about to find out, was that Daniel Ross hadn't survived war, loss, and the crushing weight of starting over just to be laughed out of a lobby. Today wasn't about paper cranes. Today was about what happened when the wrong man is underestimated, one time too many. The laughter rose again, sharper this time, thrown between clinking glasses and careless gazes. One woman at the bar leaned over to her companion, gesturing subtly toward Daniel and Ava. "Probably couldn't afford a sitter," she said with a smirk. "So he drags the kid along to clean up after him." Her date chuckled and shook his head. "Thrift store jacket. Nice touch." Daniel didn't flinch. He'd heard worse in quieter rooms, but Ava's hands trembled as she tried to fold another crane. The paper creased wrong, her first real mistake of the day. She looked down, her cheeks burning with the kind of shame children shouldn't be made to feel. Daniel placed a hand gently over hers, steadying her fingers before she could crumple the delicate shape. "It's not broken, sweetheart, just different." She nodded, looking at him with wide eyes that silently asked why people were so mean. He didn't give her the words right then. Some answers weren't meant for 9-year-olds, even the tough ones. The security director hadn't moved far. He now stood near the grand piano, eyes still locked on Daniel with that broad-shouldered arrogance that came from too many years of unchecked authority. "Still here, huh?" he called out. "Thought maybe you'd take a hint." Daniel didn't bother looking up. Ava had already seen enough. But across the lobby, near the elevator that led to the upper VIP levels, something else caught his eye, something that made his entire body go still. A young woman, elegant, though not overdressed, stood defensively as two suited men loomed too close. One reached to touch her back. She shifted, polite refusal, hesitation. The other stepped slightly in front of her as she tried to move away. Daniel's vision narrowed instantly. His instincts, buried deep under months of forced normalcy, began to stir. Ava followed her father's gaze and asked softly, "What's happening over there?" He didn't answer. He was watching it build, like weather before a storm. The security director hadn't noticed, too busy amusing himself with class warfare. None of the wealthy guests had moved. Some looked over, curious, but said nothing, did nothing. The woman gripped her purse tightly. That was enough of a signal for him. Daniel stood slowly, not abruptly, not threatening, just a man choosing not to sit anymore. His boot heels were quiet against the marble, but his movement drew eyes. The security director tilted his head. "Now, where do you think you're going?" Daniel didn't reply. Ava clutched the crane in her lap, uncertain, watching the space between her father and the woman grow smaller with each step. Something in her told her this wasn't just another quiet moment. The woman tried once more to step away, her voice just loud enough to say, "Please don't touch me." The taller man laughed. "We're just being friendly, don't be so uptight." And then Daniel's voice rose above the music and the laughter. Not loud, but clear, anchored. "She said no, that should have been the end of it." The moment his voice echoed across the lobby, the air shifted. Conversations paused. Silverware clinked to stillness. It wasn't the volume, it was the certainty, the weight of someone who wasn't asking, but stating a truth. Heads turned to see who had dared interrupt the curated elegance of the violin grand. What they saw was a man in scuffed boots and a frayed collar, standing like a line drawn through marble, and suddenly everything felt different. The taller man, still holding the young woman's wrist, blinked in surprise and then grinned, amused. "You again." Thought the janitor type stayed quiet. His companion snorted, looking Daniel up and down. "You trying to impress someone, handyman?" Daniel didn't glance at them. He looked only at the woman. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Her lips parted, unsure if she should respond. No one had asked her that all night, but she nodded faintly. "I just want to leave." The security director was moving now, cutting across the floor with long strides, clearly annoyed. "Hey, sir, don't make this into something it's not." But Daniel was already between the woman and the men, not touching, not threatening, simply present. Ava remained at the couch, eyes wide, crane clutched tightly in both hands. The taller man held up his hands mockingly. "Okay, calm down, hero. You're in the wrong place with the wrong paycheck." But there was something else in his voice now, something newer, nerves. Daniel raised his sleeve cuff deliberately, just a few inches. Enough to reveal the edge of something inked in black, wrapped beneath scar tissue, and faded past. A mark not seen publicly in over a decade. One that stood for things governments denied and enemies remembered in fear. Someone near the bar gasped. A name was whispered. Not just a name, a myth. That's the Iron Veil insignia. No way, they were all killed. Weren't they wiped out in Ravenfall? The security director's step slowed, his brow furrowed, eyes narrowing in disbelief. That's not possible. Daniel lowered his sleeve again. "You need to let her go, now." Faces that had once been filled with condescension now held confusion. Then discomfort. One smart guest quietly stopped recording and put their phone away. Whatever this was, it wasn't a joke anymore. The taller man scoffed, but his hand slipped from the woman's wrist. The moment broke like thin glass. She exhaled sharply, stepping back behind Daniel as if instinctively knowing she was now in a circle that wouldn't break. "You don't know who you're messing with," the remaining man growled. "You think you can stroll in here like some washed-up soldier and play hero?" "I'm not here to play anything," Daniel said, voice as still as midnight. "But you're not touching anyone again, not while I'm standing here." Ava leaned forward on the couch, heart pounding, her father now a shape of steel in the gold-lit room. The paper crane trembled in her small hands. The two men now flanked Daniel slowly, their past arrogance hardening into something else. Defensiveness, pride, maybe fear, but too buried under years of unchecked behavior to admit. The security director watched intently but didn't intervene. He knew something had shifted, but pride wouldn't let him stand down. Not yet. He came closer, folding his arms with mock patience. "This is a high-profile hotel," he said calmly, the words clipped, rehearsed. "We have rules. Guests here expect peace, not—" His eyes drifted to Daniel's jacket, his worn-out boots. "Interruptions." Daniel didn't blink. Peace without accountability isn't peace, it's permission. A few guests who had laughed just minutes earlier fell uncomfortably quiet. The woman behind Daniel adjusted her posture slightly, her eyes no longer full of fear. Relief hadn't come yet, but something like hope had. The taller man, still wound tight from the growing tension, took a single step forward. "You think just because you scared someone during some war, it means anything here?" He pointed to the polished floor, the chandelier, the wine-stained air. "This is our world, not yours. You're out of place, old man." Daniel tilted his head. "Maybe, but that woman didn't feel safe until I stood up. And right now, every phone in this room is watching you prove why she didn't." Only then did the man realize how many devices were aimed his way. The crowd might have been passive, but their curiosity had become evidence. Some pretended they were just texting, but camera lenses don't lie. The woman's voice, soft but shaking, broke in. "He followed me up from the wine tasting. I told him no 3 times. Daniel turned slightly toward the crowd. "Now tell me, which part of her no wasn't clear?" No one answered. The space grew cold around them, heavy with a silence that couldn't hide anymore. The security director cleared his throat, trying to shift the tone. "Sir, if this escalates, we'll have to call the authorities." "You should have done that 10 minutes ago when she asked to be left alone." There was no heat in Daniel's voice, just something firmer. Steel, skillfully sheathed. "You'd rather press charges on someone who stood up than someone who didn't stop." The two men began stepping back now, postures stiff, fists clenched but indecisive. For the first time, they weren't in control, weren't the ones surrounded by silence. They were under it, pressured by it. Seeing their retreat, the security director tried salvaging his authority. "I'll have to ask you to leave the premises." "I'm happy to," Daniel replied. "Right after you help this woman get home safely. I assume your hotel still believes in service." The woman looked at him, truly looked for the first time. "Thank you," she said, her voice firmer now. "You didn't have to." Daniel gave her a small nod. "Yes, I did." Back at the couch, Ava watched him from where everything had started, her crane still in her lap, its wings still strong. The woman was quickly escorted by one of the quieter staff members toward the side hallway leading to private exits. She glanced back once, eyes locking with Daniel, as if trying to memorize the silhouette of the man who had stepped in when no one else dared. Then she was gone, and the sudden hush of the lobby returned, staring, simmering, unsure. Daniel started walking back toward Ava, but he didn't rush. Every step echoed in the silence like a deliberate act, like someone who was not walking away from trouble but walking through it. The crowd made way for him now, not mockingly, but carefully, almost respectfully. Phones lowered. No one wanted to be the one on camera still sneering. Ava was sitting exactly where he left her, her knees pulled up, arms wrapped around them, holding the paper crane between clasped hands. He knelt beside her and gently brushed her hair from her cheek. "You okay, baby?" She nodded but didn't smile. "Are they gonna come back?" "Not for us," he said. "Not tonight." The security director stood frozen near the grand piano, his expression indecisive. His pride had been punctured, and the man who did it hadn't shouted, hadn't hit anyone, hadn't even raised his voice, just stood his ground like it belonged to him. Still, something in him refused to let go. "You're lucky," he said to Daniel across the room, just loud enough for the others to hear, "that we don't press charges for interfering with private security actions." Daniel looked over calmly. "You'd need charges that hold up." One of the uniformed hotel staff returned with urgency in her steps, whispering something into the director's ear. Whatever she said made his posture stiffen. He motioned her away quickly, but not in time to hide the way his throat tightened. Daniel already knew. Something had shifted behind the scenes. Forces larger than this room had taken notice. He had felt that kind of shift before in boardrooms, war rooms, and tactical operations under blackout settings. There was always a moment when the game changed, when the people who thought they were running things realized they were several steps behind. A teenage bellhop scurried toward Daniel, holding a phone out awkwardly. "Sir, someone S asking to speak to you. They said it's urgent. Her name S. Celine Hart." Daniel's brows drew slightly. He didn't know the name, but judging by the way the security director paled, he did. He took the phone, held it to his ear. "This is Daniel Ross." A crisp, calm voice replied, "Mr. Ross, I'm sorry to call like this, but that wasn't the first complaint about those men. Just the first time someone stopped them, and you just made them very visible to people who have been watching quietly." Daniel replied with caution, "Who are you?" "Someone who could use someone like you." His hand instinctively went to his jacket pocket where Ava's crane rested, still sharp, still safe. The lobby pulsed with a strange quiet as Daniel returned the phone to the bellhop. The boy stood staring at him like he just handed a sword back to a victorious knight. Daniel gave a small nod, tucked the phone into the kid's outstretched hand, and turned to Ava, who hadn't let go of her crane. Her eyes were wide, but calm, just like his. She trusted moments like this because she trusted him. Then the elevator doors behind them dinged. 3 men stepped out, not hotel staff, not security. Suits too dark, shoes too quiet, eyes too alert. They weren't there for coffee or conversation. One of them looked directly at the security director, who now stood rigid, uncertain. The tallest of the 3 spoke first, his tone unreadable. "Where is he?" "No names, no formalities." The director motioned toward Daniel half reluctantly, half resigned. The tallest man turned toward Daniel. "Mr. Ross." Daniel didn't answer. He simply stood, placing one calm hand on Ava's shoulder, standing slightly in front of her. The man gave the smallest smile. "You caused quite a stir. It's not every day we catch a live demonstration of restraint. Tactical, precise, not just force, measured consequences. That's something we value more than you might realize." Behind him, the other 2 men began scanning the room, noting cameras, faces, exits. Others in the lobby began to realize this was no longer a class dispute. This had elevated. The tall man continued. "Miss Hart sends her regards. She's safe, thanks to you. And now, a lot of eyes are watching this hotel. You just pulled back a curtain many powerful people didn't want lifted." Daniel kept his voice even. "I'm not interested in games." "I don't blame you," the man replied, stepping closer but staying respectful. "But some games need the wrong player to finally change the rules. You embarrassed people tonight, Mr. Ross. People who have had immunity longer than some countries have had governments. What you did might look small, but it fractured something bigger." The security director finally snapped. "He harassed our staff, interfered in." The man raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "Your staff will be reviewed under federal inquiry." Whispers exploded across the lobby. Phones came back out. The very people who had mocked Daniel now tried to act like they'd never laughed. The mood had turned completely. The tall man looked at Daniel again. "Miss Hart will contact you directly, but she wanted one thing made clear. You may think you're just a man doing what's right, but tonight, you exposed the rot. And more importantly, you made people believe they don't have to stay quiet anymore." Daniel didn't say anything at first. He looked down at Ava. She looked up at him, as if sensing that something important had just shifted again. He reached into his pocket, felt the small paper crane, and exhaled. "Tell her," he said finally, "I didn't do it for a cause. I did it for my daughter. But if it helps others, I'm listening." 2 days later, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table in their modest apartment, the morning sun cutting in through the window blinds like golden lines drawn across the floor. Ava sat across from him, peanut butter smeared across her cheek, humming softly as she folded another paper crane with newspaper scraps. The world outside their unit looked the same. Dogs barked down the street. A delivery truck hissed to a stop. Somewhere a radio played static-filled jazz. But inside their walls, something subtle had shifted. He looked at the new crane she slid across the table. She grinned. "It's from the weather page, so it'll keep you safe even if there's a storm." He smiled softly, tucking it into the fresh shirt he wore. It wasn't expensive, just clean pressed. Ready? He hadn't even told her yet that someone named Celine Hart, the woman he'd helped, had offered to meet him in person today. No cameras, no press, just a conversation. But Ava knew a change was coming, the way kids do, not from words, but from silences. There was a knock at the door. Daniel opened it to find Celine standing there in jeans, a neutral-colored jacket, and with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there in the hotel. She wasn't the shaken guest he'd shielded. She was the billionaire's daughter, yes, but today she carried herself like someone who no longer needed to prove why she mattered. "Sorry to show up unannounced," she said, holding out a paper coffee cup. "I figured you'd like it black." He took it. "I do." She stepped inside, smiled at Ava, who was peeking from behind a chair. "That's Ava?" she asked gently. "That's the one," Daniel replied. "She's kind of famous now. Her cranes are everywhere. People are making them, carrying them like reminders. My inbox is full of stories." Daniel motioned for her to sit. "You came all this way just to tell me that." She placed a small folder on the table. Inside were photos, diagrams, and handwritten letters from around the country. Some from guards, some from women in corporate offices, some from high school kids who saw the video and said it changed the way they saw their fathers. "You didn't chase cameras. That's why the world followed you," she said. He glanced through the pages, reading quietly. Then he closed the folder. "I'm not a symbol," he said. "I'm just a father." "That's exactly why it worked," she said. "If you're willing, there's a place for your voice. We've started a foundation. Ethical training, not just for security teams, but for anyone in positions of power. We want to teach the kind of strength that protects instead of intimidates. You wouldn't be a face, you'd be a teacher. Quietly, as loud as you want or as silent as you need." Daniel glanced at Ava, who smiled without understanding the full meaning. "You'll still make cranes with me, right, Daddy?" she asked. He smiled, "Always." The hall was modest, more community center than corporate stage, but every seat was full. Security guards in uniform, office managers, hotel receptionists, even teenagers from local schools all sat together, eyes forward as Celine Hart stepped onto the simple wooden platform beneath a white banner that read, "The Line in the Sand Initiative." There was no spotlight, no grandeur, just purpose. And behind her on the wall, stitched into a quiet fabric logo, was a simple origami paper crane. She began speaking with poise, but her words weren't rehearsed. A few weeks ago, in a lobby full of people pretending not to see, one man stood up. Not with violence, not with threats. He simply said enough. And when no one else did, he became the line between right and wrong. In the back of the room, nearly unnoticed, Daniel sat beside Ava. He wore the same jacket from that night, worn but clean, his posture relaxed but alert. Ava leaned against him, legs swinging back and forth from her foldable chair, a fresh paper crane in her hand. It wasn't a spectacle to them, it was just another day. But now, one being shared. Celine continued, her voice steady. What happened in that hotel wasn't just heroic, it was human. Our goal with this foundation is simple: to train protectors, not enforcers, to teach response, not dominance, and to remember that strength isn't how loud you speak, it's whether you stand when it truly matters. She gestured toward the back. He didn't ask to be honored tonight, he didn't want applause, but he is here. Every head turned. Daniel shifted slightly but didn't stand. A few clapped cautiously, then more, not thunderous, not scripted, just honest appreciation rippling through the crowd. Realizing who he was, the man from the video, the one people had called the wrong man, who turned out to be exactly the person that moment needed. Celine raised one more item in her hand, a tiny enamel pin in the shape of a folded crane. This will be given to everyone who completes our new training, security or otherwise, not as decoration, as a reminder that words like no, boundaries like silence, and gestures like stillness are worth protecting. After the event, the crowd lingered. Daniel stayed in the corner. A few people approached him, not for autographs, just gratitude. One guard nodded. "You gave us a new way to serve." A hotel manager said quietly, "You reminded me what I got into this job for." Outside, Ava skipped ahead on the sidewalk, her backpack bouncing, cranes poking out of the zipper. Daniel walked behind her, pace steady, jacket zipped up against the chill. Celine caught up before they turned the corner, handing him a sealed envelope and a quiet smile. Inside the envelope was a simple note: right person, right time, and we still need you. He didn't say anything, just nodded once. Ahead of him, Ava looked back and shouted, "Come on, Daddy, you're slow." Daniel walked forward, same stride, same calm, but something new in his step. A new beginning, quiet as a paper crane.